The curiosity you feel right now, the way you connect with others, your tendency to anger, your optimistic spirit, did you choose these things? Or were they already written into you the moment you were born? In 1979, a twin study launched at the University of Minnesota shook decades of conventional wisdom. A large-scale meta-analysis integrating over 50 years of twin research revealed that heritability estimates for many personality traits cluster around 40%, a moderate yet striking degree of influence. And here's where the question deepens. If genes matter, what exactly is environment doing? What science has uncovered is this. Environment is not simply something outside the genome. DNA sequences are essentially fixed, but which genes are expressed, and to what degree, can shift in response to experience and environment. What if genes and environment are not opposing forces, but partners in constant dialogue? And what if the very concept of human nature is far more complex than we ever imagined? By the time this video ends, the way you see your own nature may be fundamentally changed. Chapter 1. What twins revealed about the power of genes. The home you grew up in, the education you received, the people you encountered, most of us believe these forces shaped who we are. But in 1979, Thomas Bouchard and his colleagues at the University of Minnesota launched the Minnesota study of twins reared apart, known as MISTRA, and that conviction began to crack. Imagine identical twins, separated shortly after birth, raised in entirely different households, then reunited decades later for psychological testing. What astonished researchers was this: their scores on standardized measures of personality, intelligence, and interests aligned with remarkable consistency. On average, identical twins showed higher correlations in personality traits than fraternal twins or ordinary siblings, even when raised completely apart. The same patterns emerged across major personality dimensions: extroversion, neuroticism, conscientiousness. There's a term for this: heritability. And here's what it doesn't mean. It does not mean personality is fully determined by genes. It's a statistical measure. Within a given population, how much of the variation between individuals can be explained by genetic factors? A heritability of 40% does not mean 40% of your personality is genetic. It means this: when people with different genes are placed in similar environments, roughly 40% of the personality differences between them can be accounted for by their genetic differences. That's the statistical reality. And there's something else worth holding on to. In many studies, the estimated contribution of shared family environment to personality traits comes out surprisingly small. But this does not mean family doesn't matter. The influence of family may be operating through non-shared environments, or through the complex interplay of genes and environment in ways that are harder to measure. I want to pause here and consider something important. Even for traits with high heritability, environmental interventions can still be profoundly effective. High heritability does not mean intervention is futile. Heritability itself is a statistic that depends on how much environmental variation exists in the population studied. What twin research revealed was the remarkable reach of genetic influence. But at the same time, science was beginning to glimpse a far more complex truth. And here's where the real mystery begins. Genes do not operate in isolation from the environment. So how exactly do genes and environment speak to each other? Chapter 2. How genes read the environment and how the environment rewrites gene expression. For a long time, we thought of nature and nurture as opponents. But science has uncovered something far more intricate. The DNA sequence itself is essentially fixed across a lifetime. Yet which genes are expressed and how strongly can shift across development and in response to environment. This is what the field of epigenetics is beginning to reveal. EPI comes from the Greek for above, a layer of information written above the genome, regulating how genes are switched on or off. There is research linking the quality of early caregiving to patterns in how stress response genes are regulated. Children who receive consistent nurturing care show patterns associated with a more modulated stress response system. At least, that's what some studies suggest. But in human research, this picture is complicated. Differences in tissue type, confounding variables, and small effect sizes all make interpretation difficult. The field is moving toward large-scale datasets, longitudinal designs, and careful causal inference to untangle what's really happening. There was a time when researchers hunted for a single depression gene, one culprit to explain it all. But large-scale genomic studies have revealed something more humbling. Genetic influences on mental health and personality emerge from thousands of variants, each contributing a tiny effect, what scientists call polygenic influence. In other words, it's not that this gene causes depression. It's the cumulative weight of countless genetic tendencies, woven together with environmental experience, that shapes the outcome. Even someone carrying high genetic risk may find that environment dramatically changes how or whether that risk manifests. And the reverse is equally true. And here's where a crucial question emerges. If gene expression shifts with environment and genetic influence unfolds through vast networks of interacting variants, then wasn't the question nature or nurture the wrong question all along? Animal studies have even hinted that ancestral experiences can influence gene expression in descendants. The mechanisms in humans remain largely uncharted, but we may be more deeply rooted in time than we ever realized. Not a binary opposition, but a ceaseless dialogue. Not a fixed blueprint, but a dynamic system that never stops responding to its world. This is the picture of human nature that modern science is beginning to draw. But what does this discovery mean when we step back and look at the larger horizon? Chapter 3. Questioning the concept of human nature itself. Having understood the dialogue between genes and environment, we need to face another question entirely. Does human nature even exist? Culture is astonishingly diverse. Values, customs, family structures, frameworks of right and wrong, these vary enormously across human societies. And yet, certain things appear in every culture, without exception. Evolutionary psychology argues this universality is not accidental. Over the long arc of evolution, our ancestors faced recurring challenges, distinguishing cooperators from defectors, choosing mates, navigating social hierarchies, and the cognitive mechanisms that help solve those problems became embedded in the human mind. But this argument faces serious criticism. Many of the things we call universal have been derived primarily from participants in Western, educated, affluent societies. In 2010, Henrich and colleagues published a landmark critique in behavioral and brain sciences, identifying what they called the weird problem: the overwhelming bias toward Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic samples that has skewed much of psychology. Cross-cultural psychology has revealed genuine differences in cognition itself. On average, East Asian populations tend to attend more to context and relationships. North American populations tend to focus more on object attributes. So, the research suggests. But these are group averages. They vary significantly by individual and by the type of task involved. This raises a possibility worth sitting with. Perhaps culture is not a thin coating applied over a fixed human core. Perhaps culture reaches far deeper into how we think and feel than we assumed. Consider this for a moment. What if human nature is not a fixed entity, but an ongoing process, always taking shape within a particular environment, culture, and history? Can we ever truly separate your nature from the world you have lived in? And here's where the final shift in perspective takes hold. The question of nature versus nurture was not just unanswered. It was framed incorrectly from the start. What the latest science points toward is this: there is no single personality gene. What exists is the accumulated weight of countless genetic micro-influences, interwoven with environment in ways of staggering complexity. And from that weaving, you emerge. A product of the endless dialogue between genetic potential and environmental possibility. Not a fixed nature, but an open being, still being shaped across an entire lifetime. Let's bring together what this exploration has revealed. Chapter 4. Truths we must reconsider. Today we venture deep into one of the most profound questions we can ask. What is human nature? We followed MISTRA's revelations about the reach of genetic influence. We explored what epigenetics is beginning to show us about how environment alters gene expression. We grappled with the staggering complexity of polygenic inheritance. And we encountered how cultural psychology is forcing us to question the very idea of a universal human nature. Tracing these threads, a reality far richer and more complex than any simple binary has come into view. Let me share the insights this exploration has given us. First, heritability is a statistical description of tendencies within a population. It is not a verdict on any individual's fate. Even when a genetic predisposition exists, a shift in environment can dramatically change how, or whether, it takes form. And even traits with high heritability can respond meaningfully to environmental intervention. Second, environment is not outside the genome. DNA sequences are essentially stable, but which genes are expressed and how strongly is shaped by experience and the world we inhabit. And genetic influence does not flow from a single source. It emerges from the summed micro-effects of thousands of variants. We are complex systems, through and through. Third, we likely cannot speak of human nature as something separable from culture. Even what appears universal takes shape only within a cultural context. Nature may not be a fixed substance at all, but a process endlessly generated by the dialogue between genes, environment, and culture. What these three insights reveal, taken together, is this: the question, nature or nurture, was always an oversimplification of something far more magnificent. Reality is dialogue. It is interaction. It is an open and unfinished process. What struck me most, moving through this exploration, is that science has not given us answers so much as it has given us richer questions. The more we decode the genome, the more its complexity astonishes us. The more we understand cultural diversity, the deeper the mystery of universality becomes. The more we know, the more wondrous the human being appears. And perhaps that is science's most honest gift. I want to leave you with a question. If events before your birth, the experiences of your ancestors, the environment of the womb, may have played some role in shaping who you are, where does your self begin and where does it end? And when we, products of genes and environment, feel that we are choosing, is that freedom real? Or is the very sense of freedom itself just another phenomenon that genes and environment have conspired to produce? There are no definitive answers to these questions yet. But the act of asking them is what deepens our understanding of ourselves. The exploration continues. When you return to daily life after this video, I want to offer you a small experiment. In the moments when a reaction arises in you, anger, joy, anxiety, try to sense which voice you hear beneath it, the voice of genes or the voice of experience. And when you encounter someone today, remember, part of why they are the way they are traces back to genes and environments they never chose. Perhaps that remembrance will soften your gaze toward them and toward yourself. Not as beings with a fixed nature, but as miraculously complex creatures born from the crossing of countless forces. Share your insights in the comments. Your questions are what propel this channel forward. Thank you for traveling with me on this intellectual journey all the way to the end. The question of human nature that we explored today connects deeply to consciousness, free will, and the essence of culture itself. At Mindshift, we continue to explore questions like these at the intersection of science and philosophy, reaching toward the heart of existence. If today's journey moves something in you, subscribing and turning on notifications will open the door to the next exploration. Until next time, the exploration continues.